getting ready to get ready for the centennial, and it's been very exciting. A couple things I wanted to let you know about. I think I spoke to most of you as you walked in as far as our single health passport for our centennial year. If you did not get a passport, their staff has more there on the table now. And those of you who have been, it's going to be the honor system. Those of you who have been to the January and the February History on the Hill lectures, like the one you're attending this evening, you can put in those stamps in your passport for January and February. Well, we're watching you. As you read through the pages of the passport, it's kind of self-explanatory, however many, it's not every city event. Someone said they went to the Frida Kahlo, event here in the library, so that's not a passport stamp worthy event. But those things that are specific and set up specific to our centennial, those are the things we want you to be excited about, learn more about our city, and celebrate this milestone for our city as a community and celebrate it together. And we have a lot to celebrate. A couple other housekeeping things. We have sponsorship packets. They're beautiful, brochure quality packets for individuals, for residents, for individuals, for businesses, for corporations. And so I encourage you to grab one of these. There'll be several at the table. I have several with me if you're just curious about what all is in there. And so tonight, a one-time offer, I'm encouraging anyone who may know of a business. We've been doing our best to get to as many businesses as we can. I am personally going in, talking to business owners about the sponsorship packet, how they can, how they can be involved in the centennial and the recognition that their business can get in all our printed materials on the city website, on the city council meetings, and for all our major events, and their logo and their business printed in those programs. So it's going to be a great opportunity for many businesses to get great exposure. We'll have they're going up within a few days. I'm very anxious that our banners will go up. We'll have street banners for the centennial with the businesses that have sponsored each of those banners. Those banners will be up for a full 12 months, so they'll be up even past the first of 2025 to give those cities, give those businesses the recognition, the individuals the recognition that they need for sponsoring this great event in our city this year. And so, for any of you that would like to take one or two of these packets, you know of businesses that you deal with in Signal Hill, if you give this to the business owner, and if you've prompted them to sponsor something, let us know, and we will give you for free. These are $25. But if you get a business to sponsor something from our sponsorship book, you will get a yard sign like this, that you have been committed to helping the community celebrate the centennial. Okay? If you don't want to sponsor a business, or if you don't want to go into a business and say, hey, sponsor this for the city, you can purchase these yard signs for $25 for yourself, and as your own contribution to contributing to the extra party we're having. So as I go into businesses, I've been describing the centennial budget that the city's been setting aside, several $1,000s every year since our 90th, for the last 10 years, right? So that has been enough to designate all our events, staff all of those events. So I'm describing it as a big birthday cake. The city has planned and designed the big birthday cake, but our sponsorships that we get are adding the bells and whistles and fireworks and drone shows to the top of the birthday cake, okay? So we already have a lot of commitment from some of our businesses, and I want to encourage you. So they'll be at the door there, like I said, and I'll have some here. And take one, even if you're curious, if you don't plan to pass it on to another business, please take one so you can recognize the things that we're doing and how we'll be supporting. Do we have the other paperwork about our presenter? Thank you. Some of you have already heard these introductions, but we have a lot of new people. I was not here in January. I was here for this event in February, and it's obviously growing, and I'm very excited. They pulled extra chairs out tonight. This is also being recorded, and so we're making it available on our city website, for other just documenting these events and documenting the history of how we're celebrating this year. So we have 2 presenters this evening and 2 individual staff members here in the city that are working diligently on researching, keeping, maintaining, and displaying our history and all the details and facts that they can find. And they're both very passionate about that. I read to you last month David Ferrari's bio, but I'm going to review it again for those of you who weren't here and and so you can know the qualifications of the individuals here that are presenting to you this evening. David, we're going to start here. David, originally from Inglewood Cliffs, New Jersey, he received his Bachelor of Arts in American History from Rutgers University. First, David, raise your hand and wave, so they know who we're talking about. There we go. At Rutgers University, he volunteered at the Palisades Park Historical Society, where he led a team to research a grave site that dated back to the early 1800s. David also went to St. Louis for summer to work on doing research on the Lewis and Clark expedition for his senior thesis. In 2005, David moved to Hershey, Pennsylvania, where he worked at the Middletown Public Library and in the Historical Society there. And then David later moved out west to Long Beach, started volunteering at Rancho Los Cerritos Museum. And it was here that David learned how to put exhibits together, started researching the Bixby family and the early history of Long Beach. And then in 2016, David began working here at the Sickles Public Library, became intrigued with the history of Sickle Hill, and he began to do his own research on the Sickle Hill and has been involved in the Sickle Hill Historical Society. And in 2021, David received his master's in public history from American Public University. And David is now helping put together the exhibits that you'll be seeing throughout the year in our history room for this and here in the lobby of the library, as well as doing the monthly history talks and helping our city celebrate its centennial. David is also part of the Sickle Hill Historical Society, who have been a great support to him in his efforts, and where he serves as vice president. He's currently doing research on Jessie Nelson, the first female mayor, of the city of Sickle Hill, and with his goal to author a book about Jessie Nelson in the near future. Our other presenter and researcher for Sickle Hill is Nathalie Sickles. Say hi, Nathalie. She's right there. Nathalie grew up in a small town in Hemet, and her parents homesteaded their 5 acres. In high school, Nathalie took an American history class, where her passion for history developed. From 2014 to 2019, Nathalie attended California State University, Monterey Bay, as a first-generation student and declared social history as her major. Nathalie studied American history, and these courses focused on social structures and expanding the historical narrative. From 2017 to 2018, Nathalie completed her year abroad at Maynooth University in Ireland. Nathalie studied global history in Ireland and had the opportunity to travel to historical places. In 2019, Nathalie graduated with a bachelor's in social history, and within the year of COVID-19, and that was the year COVID-19 happened. She was able to complete her bachelor's degree. Nathalie decided to pursue her master's in historical studies at Strathclyde, is that correct? Strathclyde University in Glasgow, Scotland, from 2021 to 2022. She has worked closely with archivists and developed a passion for archives. In June of 2023, Nathalie was hired at Sickle Hill Library and works alongside David Ferrari to curate the history exhibits that you'll be experiencing and seeing throughout this whole year. Nathalie wants to continue to research the history of Sickle Hill and make it accessible to the surrounding communities. So those are our 2 presenters and their qualifications and how they come to be with us tonight. If you didn't get your passport stamped for your attendance tonight or didn't get a passport yet, you can do that on your way out. So enjoy your evening. And who are we going to start? David or?
We do student health.
Oh, yes, our first. This is not on the agenda. I added it. Okay. We've done several things in preparation for the centennial. One of them was to commission a song that will not be presented this evening, but here's a song that we commissioned by a local musician. for the centennial that'll be revealed at our large event in April 27th. And the other thing is to commission a poem. I found out from this individual's wife more than a year ago that he was a poet, and that she promoted him, and he would love to write a poem for Signal Hill, and he's working on something for Signal Hill. And so anyway, I followed up with that, and he's done a beautiful job. And so tonight we have a special guest, Mr. Ian Hand, a Signal Hill resident. How long have you lived here in Signal Hill?
32 years.
32 years. And so he's done some research. He might give you a brief description of how he's come to the poem that he's written for the centennial, from the view of the indigenous people that were here before we were. Ian, come forward. You're going to have to hold this right on your chin to make sure that's going to be well.
We'll get by.
Don't touch any buttons.
Who's got the buttons? I bet it's ready.
No rotten space.
Oh, good. So, thank you, Laurie.
Got to put it right on your chin.
Thank you, Laurie, for this time of century celebration. Here's 100 lines that mainly rhyme. I appreciate the invitation.
Got to put it right up there, Ian.
Can you hear me?
There you go.
Put up your hands if you can't hear me. Think about it. Okay. I've called this Signal Hill 100 years and more. 360 feet above the blue, Signal Hill proudly stands, with views declared by many as the finest in the land. For millennia, the native tribes revered this special place to live and procreate, then die and sustain the Tongva race. They lived a simple, peaceful life and worshipped Mother Earth, passed traditions down through spoken word with approbation tinged with mirth. The men would hunt for fish and game. The women from fields would gather fruits, nuts, maize, and medicines to enhance their tribal platter. They used smoke in effective ways to make their hunting keener, and one day realized that the fumes they made could be seen from Catalina. Thus one time known as Bay of Smokes, thence Los Cerritos, Little Hill, but with functionality realised, 'twas renamed Loma Central, Signal Hill. The Indians would travel with other tribes to trade, food, clothing, trinkets, tar for boats, all caringly handmade. In 1784 came Don Manuel Nieto, whose 300,000-acre grant of land became the first white ghetto. The land spawned 6 huge ranchos, of which some remain today. Best known, Rancho Los Cerritos, preserved for historic display. So many streets we walk today bear names of first landowners, Stearns, Temple, Bixby, Figueroa, and many other personas. The ranchos were used for farming, grazing, livestock, and agriculture. Zinnias, pumpkins, hay, and dewberries, even a dairy for cheese manufacture. By dawn of 20th century, stately mansions topped the hill, all drawn by 360 vistas that to this day still thrill. By 1916, oil drilling had begun, all unsuccessful ventures until, well, Alamitos #1. On June 23rd, 1921, to everyone's surprise, this well became a gusher before startled observers' eyes. The drill bit hit a pool of oil, then richest in the world, and with this nascent business, a new economy unfurled. Splendid homes were soon demolished as peace turned topsy-turvy, replaced by wooden derricks tall, spewing crude oil black and dirty. 1,000 wells in all were drilled in this oil boom sensation, where mega fortunes were won and lost by investors throughout the nation. Then Long Beach demanded an oil tax from this unincorporated area, but Jesse Nelson said, "No way! My solution is somewhat better. From Long Beach City we will secede and seize our independence. The city of Signal Hill will be, and there will be no repentance." So on April 14, 1924, 100 years ago this day, Jessie Nelson became the first Lady Mayor and launched Signal Hill on its way. When oil extraction began to wane after 5 decades production, the city conceived an ambitious plan of past glory redemption. To mop up relics of the oily past, restore views and parks and beauty, to revive a place to work, live and play, and gestate a new economy. To our current elected councillors, Copeland, Hanson, Jones, Wilson, and Mayor Woods, may your dedication is appreciated in this distinguished neighbourhood. So congratulations, Signal Hill, on this, your first centenary. May your continued growth maintained in a manner quite exemplary. 360 feet above Long Beach, Signal Hill proudly stands, with views and lifestyle acclaimed by most as elegant and grand. I'll say a little acknowledgement before I leave the dais. To David Ferrari, for your encouragement and help, and the team in the library as well. Thank you so much for your support and encouragement. And to another historian in the room, Ken Davis, who's with us tonight. Thank you too, Ken. And dare I say, for goading me into doing this. Thank you, Laurie.
Sydney, do a magnificent job.
Yay.
Weeks and weeks of months to get it right and do his research. Thank you so much, Ian. You'll be hearing from Ian again at some of our centennial events. You're just the first part of the community that's been able to hear his poetry, and we're very proud of him, and he was spot on, right? I wouldn't make any corrections at all. So, what's that? Check the box. Check the box, yeah. So be sure you attend more events. You'll hear from Ian again, and you can poke the people beside you and say, "I've already heard it. You're going to really, really love it." So next time we'll have another guest surprise to reveal other things about the centennial at the next in April History on the Hill event. So be sure you don't miss that either. Okay. So who's going to present? Good. Nathalie first. I'm going to a centennial planning meeting. You'll do great.
Thank
I'll
you.
watch the recording later. Thank you so much.
So much. Thank you. Thank you, Laurie. And thank you for the lovely poem again. That was just wonderful. Hitting all the historical. Oh, sorry. Hitting all the historical points. So thank you for that. My name's Nathalie, and just like my biography said, I recently moved to Long Beach in June of last year. And so I was introduced to the Signal Hill history, and I've just been diving into it with David and helping him curate the exhibits that have been happening. So it's really been inspiring to see how much history goes back generation and generation, and to just preserve the history as much as we can. And so with this is my first history talk, and we are going to be focusing on from the 1930s to the 1940s. 1924, Signal Hill was established as an independent city to avoid Long Beach's per barrel tax on oil. And by this point, there were about 2,000 residents, and many men became roughnecks and pumped oil was a very dangerous endeavor. So starting off, the stock market crashed in 1929. It was also known as Black Tuesday, and there were huge investments in stocks that were highly overvalued. So the banks that tended to invest in these stocks, they were the first ones to foreclose, and by 1933, more than 6,000 banks shut down, and 6 million people were unemployed across America. And this newspaper article shows that Wall Street was in a panic. And this is an image from that day. And so everybody was laid off immediately, and no one had any cash because they lost it on the stock market. And so this man is actually selling his car to try to get any cash. The Black Tuesday led into the Great Depression era, which lasted for 10 years, from 1929 to 1939. Families who lost their homes were forced to migrate in search of better living conditions. And this was definitely a desperate and financially turbulent time. When families did find tents, they were usually shanty towns referred to as Hoovervilles. The government did develop the New Deal, which provided jobs and aid in America from 1933 to 1938. And this is a man with his 2 kids trying to find a place to live. This is another program that the New Deal created, which were soup kitchens and breadlines. And these women are feeding children, and many soup kitchens were ran by private charities and churches. Soup was economically better because water could be added to serve more people, so it could definitely be stretched more. Some of the most popular soups during this time was split pea soup and potato soup, which is still very good to this day. People still enjoy it. To the left is an unemployed man who is listing his skills and even his phone number on the sign to get a job. So it's basically his resume that he's showing. To the right is another program from the New Deal, was food stamps, which was invented in 1933 as a solution for the food insecurity. And this program still exists to this day. The Farm Security Act was led by Roy Stryker, and he created the historical section, which lasted from 1935 to 1937. The initial goal of this program was to photograph farm security agents providing aid to farmers, but then it quickly transitioned to photographers trying to capture, quote, a visual encyclopedia of America. So they would go around and take pictures of everyday Americans surviving the Great Depression. Dorothy Lane is one of these photographers. This to the left is her iconic picture of the migrant mother. She is surrounded by her 3 kids, and her husband's actually outside of the frame. And she explains to Dorothy that they had to survive off of frozen vegetables, the kids had to kill birds, and that they even had to sell their tires from the car to get money that way. And Dorothy Lane was a critical role she had a very big role in the 20th century. And in World War II, she took pictures of the Japanese internment camps as well. This is a picture of 3 orphans at a farmer's migrant camp in California. In the middle, as you can see, they do not have any shoes, and they're in tattered clothes. The stove is actually going into the tree, and that is the stove. If they can't find food, that's what they're going to be cooking on. So the Dust Bowl coincided with the Great Depression. This was severe dust storms and droughts that swept across from Texas to Nebraska during the 1930s. It Dust Bowl intensified the economic impacts of the Great Depression, which drove many farming families to migrate. Here is a picture of the dust coming over the area and almost engulfing the truck. Here are 3 women modeling different face masks to protect themselves from the dust. And this picture was taken in 1935. And also John Steinbeck wrote The Grapes of Wrath, which was published in 1939 and focuses on the Dust Bowl migration and centers on the Joad family from Oklahoma to California. He writes about the harsh realities and obstacles that the families had to deal with. And it won a Pulitzer Prize, and it was adapted into a screenplay the very next year in 1940. Here is another family traveling from Oklahoma to New Mexico during this time. Again, in the center is a little boy with no shoes on, and the family has very little luggage or any belongings that they're taking with them. So just the clothes on their backs. So the Great Depression had its impacts on Signal Hill. The oil stock prices continued to decline as the Depression worsened. In 1929, the Gas Act was passed, and this regulated and prevented gas wastage as the occurrences of blowouts. So in the past month, David specifically talked about certain gushers and fires that occurred. For example, the Black and Drake's blast and Andrews number 3. In 1931, spacing requirements were passed in Signal Hill, which restricted all future drilling to be within 1 acre parcels. And prior to that, as you can see in the photo, a lot of the derricks were assembled to be so close to each other because they wanted it to make profits at the end of the day. So because they were so close to each other, one person writes that people could step from one derrick to another without touching the ground. By 1933, federal government took control of the regulations of the oil products, and many engineers supported these regulations. The ground was literally sinking as a result of the 500 million barrels of oil that was pumped up to that date in 1930. The property owners feared, because of this, millions of dollars of the pumping stations and derricks would collapse and implode. But the engineers assured investors that Signal Hill would survive because it was the most strongly reinforced mountain in the world. But David will talk about the earthquake that came very shortly after. And he will expand on it. This is a quote from New York Times reported on November 1st, 1931,